My father has always understood that people of all faiths, all backgrounds, and all communities deserve to be celebrated and supported.
The news broke quietly, almost too quietly for what it meant. Within minutes, every television network in the United Kingdom carried the same headline. Prince William confirms tragic update on King Charles's health. The words rippled through social media, through living rooms, through the halls of Buckingham Palace itself. For months, rumors had swirled about the king's treatment, his frail appearances, his unexpected absences. But this time, the confirmation came not from palace aides or doctors. It came directly from his son, the future king, speaking with an edge of sorrow that no royal statement could soften. Outside the palace gates, the mood was unlike anything seen since Queen Elizabeth's passing. Crowds gathered, clutching flowers and phones, unsure whether to pray or to prepare for the inevitable. The palace itself remained shrouded in silence for hours, reporters lining the mall, cameras pointed at the windows that remained firmly closed. Across the Atlantic, international broadcasters replayed William's brief statement over and over. "My father's condition is stable, but his illness is incurable. We are cherishing the time we have together." Those words, incurable and cherishing, were all the world needed to hear. King Charles's health had been the subject of speculation since his cancer diagnosis. In early 2024, Buckingham Palace had released carefully worded updates emphasizing optimism, rest, and resilience. But behind closed doors, sources whispered that the treatments had taken a heavier toll than anyone expected. In public, the king smiled and waved, his posture proud but his energy waning. He continued to meet ambassadors and sign documents, yet each appearance seemed to drain him more. Now, after months of uncertainty, Prince William had stepped forward to tell the truth. To understand how this moment arrived, one must look back decades to a time when Charles was the vigorous, athletic heir to the throne. In his youth, he was known for his love of polo, gardening, and hiking the Scottish Highlands. His fitness was part of his identity, proof that a royal life could be active and purposeful. He would rise before dawn, spend hours on horseback, and never complain about the bruises or the rain. Those who knew him then described him as tough, almost stubborn about his health. A man who refused to show weakness even when he was hurt. That pride began to show cracks in 1998, when Charles underwent knee surgery after persistent pain made public events difficult. It was a minor procedure, arthroscopic and common among athletes, but it marked the first time the public glimpsed his vulnerability. Then, in 2003, came a hernia operation, another reminder that even princes age. Both times he returned to work quickly, making light of the matter, shaking hands with nurses and joking with photographers outside the hospital. But privately, those close to him said he began to think differently about his body and what it meant to endure. There were other smaller scares. A benign growth removed from his nose in 2008, a few tumbles during polo matches that left him concussed or bruised. Once, he was thrown so hard that doctors feared a head injury, yet Charles insisted on finishing the game. It became a royal trademark. Duty above discomfort, tradition above self. That same drive would later keep him standing before cameras long after his doctors advised rest. For him, the crown was not merely an inheritance, it was an obligation of spirit, something to be carried no matter the cost. Then the pandemic struck. In 2020, when the announcement came that Charles had tested positive for COVID-19, the entire nation seemed to hold its breath at once. He was 71 then, an age considered especially vulnerable. Yet his symptoms were mild, and he recovered quickly. While isolating in Scotland, He kept working from afar, taking video calls and reviewing daily briefings. To the public, it looked like a sign of his strength, but those close to him noticed small shifts, weariness, shorter engagements, and a growing dependence on his aides. It wasn't frightening at the time, but it quietly sowed the early worries that would later prove significant. In early 2024, the palace issued an unusually detailed statement revealing that the king would undergo treatment for an enlarged prostate. Many applauded the openness as a modern step forward. The procedure went well, and Charles appeared upbeat when he left the hospital. But only a few weeks later, further tests uncovered something else, something far more serious. In February, Buckingham Palace confirmed that doctors had discovered a form of cancer. They did not reveal the exact type, which only intensified public speculation and concern. For the first time, the monarch of the United Kingdom found himself battling an illness he could not fully command or control. From that moment on, a pattern began to repeat. Hospital visits, short periods of recovery, and cautious hope. The palace described each development as routine or preventative, but as the months went by, the toll became visible. His weight dipped, his complexion grew paler, and his time at public events shortened. Still, he remained unwavering. He continued meeting the Prime Minister every week, signing documents and offering brief addresses. Yet those who met him privately said he was often deeply tired. Now, with Prince William confirming that the disease cannot be cured, the truth that had been carefully guarded for so long is finally public. It happened at a charity event in London, where William delivered the news. Standing at the podium with a calm but heavy expression, he spoke as cameras flashed, and the crowd fell silent. "My father has faced his illness with the courage we all know him for," he said. "But we have reached a stage where we must accept that some battles are not meant to be won, only met with grace." The silence that followed was profound. Those few words, plain, heartfelt, and devastating, spread more quickly and powerfully than any official announcement could. It marked the first time a royal had spoken so frankly about mortality since the death of Princess Diana. The public response was immediate. Thousands sent messages to the palace, candles glowed outside Windsor Castle, and even long-standing critics of the monarchy offered compassion. To many in Britain, Charles had become a symbol of steadiness after Queen Elizabeth's passing, a figure who bridged the old world and the new. His decline now felt like the closing of a chapter. William's decision to speak out was praised as both courageous and kind, yet it also carried political implications, hinting that the transfer of responsibility, if not the crown itself, had already begun. Behind the scenes, aides say King Charles has been preparing for this moment with quiet acceptance. In recent weeks, he has reportedly recorded personal messages, updated private letters, and spoken openly with the Archbishop of Canterbury about his wishes. Those who have seen him describe him as thoughtful rather than frightened. He has talked about legacy, about leaving behind more than a reign, about shaping a renewed vision for the institution he has led. Like monarchs before him, he has set down what palace staff call his final wishes, written not as legal directives, but as moral guidance. Royal history is filled with such traditions. Queen Victoria asked to be buried in white, wearing her wedding veil and holding a locket containing Prince Albert's image. George V urged that the monarchy remain humble and close to its people. King George VI told a young Elizabeth to stay calm and steady, no matter the storm. Charles, deeply aware of that heritage, is said to have shared three hopes: that the monarchy continues to evolve, that his sons reconcile, and that Britain never lose sight of the humanity behind the crown. It is both a personal appeal and a blueprint for the future. That first wish, modernization, has already started to take shape. Under Charles, the monarchy has become leaner, focusing on essential duties and greater transparency. William and Catherine have emerged as the new faces of that mission. Their warmth, relatability, and dedication to causes like mental health and the environment have transformed how the public views the crown. William's Earthshot Prize and Catherine's early childhood initiatives are widely seen as extensions of the king's vision, a monarchy that serves the people rather than rules over them. Catherine, in particular, has come to represent the quiet strength once associated with Queen Elizabeth. Her poise throughout Charles's illness has earned admiration. She continues her royal engagements while raising 3 children and managing her own recent health challenges. To many, she embodies the future of royal womanhood, dignified, resilient, and deeply relatable. Those close to Charles often remark how proud he is of her, describing her as the steady star of the next generation. At the same time, Queen Camilla has taken on a larger share of the king's responsibilities. She has hosted official receptions, met with foreign dignitaries, and even presided over ceremonial duties. Her composure has been remarkable, especially given the decades of scrutiny she has faced. Insiders describe her as Charles's anchor during his treatment, reading to him, praying with him, and making sure he gets rest. Her devotion has softened public opinion and transformed her into an unexpected symbol of endurance. Then there is Princess Anne, the family's quiet engine. She continues to perform hundreds of engagements each year, embodying the sense of duty instilled by her mother. Palace insiders say Anne has become an unofficial advisor to William, guiding him through the complex transition as he steps closer to the throne. Her work ethic and steadiness have made her indispensable during this uncertain period. Yet, even as the royal machine adapts, one absence cannot be ignored: Prince Harry. The king's younger son lives thousands of miles away, largely estranged from the institution that shaped him. His relationship with his father has only slightly improved in recent months, marked by a few private phone calls and one brief visit after the diagnosis. Sources close to the palace say Charles still hopes for reconciliation, often speaking of his 2 sons, 2 paths, 1 hope. Harry's story remains both tragic and defining. His departure in 2020 was meant to bring peace, but it instead sparked years of controversy. His interviews, memoir, and legal battles have only deepened the divide. Now, with his father's health declining, whispers suggest Harry feels the pull of duty again. He's torn, one insider said. He wants to be there, but he also knows his presence could overshadow the moment. Whether he will return in time remains one of the monarchy's most pressing emotional questions. Meanwhile, William has stepped fully into the role of acting monarch in all but name. He chairs state meetings, attends daily briefings, and manages the rhythm of the crown's day-to-day operations. Yet those close to him say he is quietly struggling. Watching his father fade while preparing to take over is a paradox no son envies. He's trying to balance being the Prince of Wales and the son of a dying king. One aide said, "That's a weight few could imagine." The nation now watches closely, wondering what comes next. Could King Charles abdicate? Could Britain see another living monarch pass on the crown before death? Modern history offers only one precedent: Edward VIII in 1936, who gave up the throne for love rather than health. If Charles were to step down, Parliament would need to pass a law specific to his abdication. Legal experts consider it possible but unlikely. Charles views his reign as a sacred duty, one to be fulfilled until his final breath. More likely, the monarchy will rely on existing mechanisms like the Regency Acts, which allow councillors of state, such as William and Camilla, to carry out royal duties on the king's behalf. That process has quietly already begun. William signs certain documents, attends investitures, and represents the crown abroad. It is a delicate balance between continuity and respect, ensuring the monarchy continues to function while the king rests. As the days pass, the world watches not only a royal family in transition, but a father and son navigating the unspoken goodbye. Cameras capture William leaving the hospital, his jaw tight, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Each image tells a story of dignity, meeting grief. The public senses it too, the feeling that an era is closing, that the man who waited 70 years to be king may not reign much longer inside Buckingham Palace. Preparations continue for the inevitable. Documents are updated, ceremonies outlined, logistics quietly rehearsed. Yet even in these practicalities, there is tenderness. Staff members speak of how Charles insists on writing personal thank-you notes, how he asks daily about the gardens, the weather, the world outside his window. His reign, short but meaningful, has been defined by compassion, a bridge between the ancient and the modern, between ceremony and sincerity. For Prince William, the path forward is both clear and daunting. He will become king sooner than expected, inheriting not only the throne, but the responsibility of healing a family and a nation. His words, steady, compassionate, resolute, already reflect that destiny. As one royal historian put it, the crown has already begun to rest on his shoulders. And so, Britain stands at the edge of change once more. The image of King Charles, frail but dignified, waving from a car window will linger in collective memory. Prince William's voice, trembling yet brave, has given the truth its final shape. The monarchy, like the man who leads it, is mortal. Yet in that mortality lies its most human strength, endurance. Whether King Charles reigns for months or years more, his legacy is already written in service, in family, and in the unspoken courage of facing the end with grace. In the days that followed, the United Kingdom seemed to hold its breath. The rhythm of national life slowed, as if the very air around Buckingham Palace had thickened with expectation. Crowds gathered in quiet clusters at royal residences across the country. Sandringham, Windsor, Balmoral, each place tied to memories of the king's long life in service. Outside Clarence House, bouquets lined the pavement. Some carried handwritten notes. "Thank you for your grace. For king and country, always." The palace guards, stoic as ever, stood at their posts beneath a sky that felt heavy with history. The Prime Minister visited the king privately that week, a meeting described as brief but profound. No official details were released, only a statement confirming that His Majesty remained informed of all affairs of state. Yet word quietly spread among political circles that the conversation had been less about governance and more about legacy, how to preserve stability when the inevitable moment came. Charles, those close to him said, spoke softly but firmly. The crown endures. It always has, and it always will. Inside his private chambers, the king was said to spend his days surrounded by books, letters, and gentle music. His beloved dogs lounged near the window, while Camilla read aloud from poetry or scripture. Visitors spoke of a calm in him, a quiet peace, born not from denial, but from acceptance. "He has made his peace with time," one aide said softly. "He understands the world will move on. He only hopes it moves on kindly." At Balmoral, where the royal family gathered in the summer of 2025, Prince William arrived with his family for what aides called a private visit. The children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, played on the lawns, unaware of the weight on the adults' shoulders. For William, the visit carried both joy and sorrow. He knew it might be one of the last times his children would see their grandfather as they remembered him. Gentle, humorous, endlessly curious Charles had insisted on the visit, wanting them to see the gardens one last time. The evening meeting between father and son lasted nearly 2 hours. There were no cameras, no courtiers, just the two men and the quiet of the Scottish dusk. Later, those close to the family said William emerged with tears in his eyes but calm in his voice. He said his father was proud of him, a confidant recalled. He said everything that needed to be said. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's return sparked intense speculation. Paparazzi waited at Heathrow, scanning every arriving flight for a glimpse. Days passed with nothing. Then, without fanfare, a black SUV entered the palace gates. One evening, the next morning, the palace confirmed the Duke of Sussex had visited his father privately. The visit lasted less than an hour, but witnesses described it as deeply emotional. The words shared remained private, yet sources close to both brothers suggested the meeting may have begun the slow path to reconciliation. In the press, the tone shifted from speculation to reflection. Newspapers published long retrospectives on Charles's life, his decades as Prince of Wales, his environmental advocacy, his devotion to the arts. Documentaries replayed him planting trees, visiting flood victims, sketching in his notebooks. The emerging narrative portrayed not a king fading from relevance, but a man whose lifelong passions had finally found their mark in history. He was ahead of his time, one commentator said. He spoke of climate change before it was fashionable, of duty when the world prized freedom. His reign may be brief, but his impact will endure. Public sentiment reflected that respect. Candlelit vigils continued nightly outside Buckingham Palace. Choirs sang hymns. Union Jacks flew at half-mast, not by order, but instinct. Even monarchy critics felt moved by the dignity, the quiet courage of a king facing mortality without spectacle. For a brief moment, Britain felt united, not by politics or pageantry, but by empathy inside the palace. Preparations for transition grew urgent. Official documents were reviewed, speeches drafted, logistics rehearsed for what insiders called Operation Menai Bridge, the code name for the king's eventual passing. Yet those closest to Charles insisted hope remained, and moments of light still shone. He laughs, he reminisces, one staff member said. He tells stories of childhood, of the gardens, of his mother. There's continuity. Even in decline, he reminds us where we've come from. The Archbishop of Canterbury visited often, offering prayers and companionship. On one occasion, he led a small private service attended only by Charles, Camilla, William, and Anne. They sang softly, the sound barely rising above the wind outside. Afterward, Charles reportedly said, "If my reign ends tomorrow, I'll leave, knowing we did our best for this country." It was both confession and benediction. In Parliament, tributes began to appear in quiet, understated ways. MPs from every party spoke of the king's dedication, his lifelong service, his gentle humor. One recalled a private audience in which Charles spoke about architecture and agriculture with equal passion. He cared deeply about the details of life, the MP said, not just the grand symbols, but the soil beneath them. It was that humanity, perhaps more than his titles, that truly endeared him to the people. As autumn settled in, the palace released what would likely be the final official photograph of King Charles III. He sat in his study, sunlight spilling through the window, a faint smile playing on his lips. On his desk rested a framed picture of Queen Elizabeth II and another of his sons as children. The image was simple, unadorned yet striking, a man positioned between generations, between duty and eternity. It became an instant icon, appearing on front pages the next morning under headlines like "Grace Until the End." In the following weeks, the world grew quieter. Public engagements were paused, and palace statements became rare. Then, one evening, the palace gates closed earlier than usual, and word spread that family members had been summoned to Windsor. No announcement came that night, but the next morning, the Prime Minister appeared at Downing Street in a dark suit. "His Majesty the King remains comfortable," she said softly, "and is surrounded by his family." Across the nation, people read the message between the lines. Church bells tolled, not in mourning but in prayer. People paused in shops, on buses, at offices, murmuring words of hope. The moment hung between two eras, between a king's final hours and a son's inevitable dawn. The monarchy once again stood at the threshold of history, its heart beating in time with the nation it had served for generations. And somewhere within Windsor's quiet halls, a father looked at his son one last time, not as monarch to heir, but as man to boy, passing on not only a crown, but burdens, dreams, and love for the land they both called home. It was, in every sense, the most human of goodbyes.